So, good evening. For those of you who haven't met me, my name's Alice, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to Tara Institute and this final Monday night in the September series. Is there anyone new tonight? Here for the first time? Oh, a very warm welcome. So, the only thing you have to do is relax as much as possible and be comfortable as much as possible. So this is the last of this September series, and next week Dr. Ross Moore will be at the helm, and he's been away for a long time with illness, so it'll be wonderful for everyone who knows Ross to have him back. He's a bit of a superstar. He's an exceptional teacher and an amazing human being with really serious understanding of Dharma topics. So he's your guy if you've got difficult questions. So you can save them for him. And he's also leading a one-day course on the last Sunday in October, so I highly recommend that. A couple of weeks ago I mentioned that one of the ways we can integrate spiritual practice so that it becomes more settled in our life is to do more extended practice, so to do one-day courses, weekend courses, retreat if you can. So I do recommend that. And over the last month, we have been thinking about ways to embed or enmesh meditation practice in our lives, and both doing the formal, the sitting meditation, and also the kind of active where we're watching the mind during the day. And some of the strategies that I've mentioned, I'll just remind you, they've included being very clear about why we're doing it. This is important, that we're very, very clear about why we want to engage in this inner work, the spiritual practice. So the motivation is very important. Then spending a little time every day watching the breath, and we did the 3-minute breathing space in the second week, which I think is a very helpful practice, and we'll do that again tonight. And we've talked about how we keep tabs on our thoughts and emotions during the day with the aim of reducing those harmful mental states, so reducing the minds of anger and irritation and all of those, self-justification and so on, and increasing the minds of compassion, wisdom, understanding, tolerance, generosity, enthusiasm, with the aim of becoming kinder, wiser, happier human beings, because that is the result. And we know that it's not instant coffee. This is the work of a lifetime. From my experience, it's very slow. It takes a long time to make fruitful changes. But with setting our motivation and really trying to cultivate kindness and patience and so on, everything we do becomes meaningful. It's marvelous. Maybe I don't have an important job, and I'm getting old, and things aren't perfect. But even peeling the potatoes, with a good motivation, it changes peeling the potatoes into spiritual practice. It's true. If you think, sometimes I know people are very time poor, and so they're often working very long hours, and then children or parents to look after. There's a lot of stuff going on, and then you have to cook. And that mind of resentment can come up pretty easily, can't it, in the kitchen, you know, look in the fridge, grumpy mind, and what am I going to cook? But instead, you know, if you can change it, because that's just a habit, we can change that to thinking, okay, I have to cook dinner. And may cooking dinner, it can be so creative, you know, it may be the cause for the people in my life to be very healthy. And even, you know, kind of looking further, think, may this be the cause to be able to provide food for every living being? You know, there are lots of ways you can think about it. So having a bath, you know, having a bath for all human beings. So setting your motivation and having a positive mind can transform mundane activities. So let's do the 3-minute breathing space now, and it's to step out of that kind of busy mind and bring us into this moment in the Gompa. This will be a new practice for some people. It's quite simple, and I'll talk you through it. So the first thing is to sit in a kind of intentional way that reflects what we're doing with our minds, which is to become awake, not going to sleep. So sitting with a straight spine, but as comfortably as possible. And, you know, we can remember that when we're sitting in this posture, we're reminded of the posture that the Buddha was sitting in when he became enlightened. So it's very dignified. And you can close your eyes. And for the first minute, we ask in an interested and friendly way, what is my experience right now? In my thoughts, in my feelings, in my bodily sensations. How am I feeling right now? In my body, in my mind. And without too much commentary, we just acknowledge and register that experience, even if it's unwanted. Just checking up. How am I tonight? Then, for the second minute, which we might call gathering, we gently redirect full attention to our breathing, as many of you are used to doing. So we focus our attention on each in-breath and each out-breath as they follow one after the other. So really focusing very clearly, breathing in, breathing out. And our breath functions as a kind of anchor to bring us into the present moment and helps us to tune into a state of awareness and stillness. So for this minute, we focus on the coming and going of the breath. Keeping the in-breath and the out-breath at the center of our focus. And then for the third minute, it's like expanding. So we expand the field of our awareness around the breathing so that it includes a sense of the body as a whole again. A sense of our posture and face. Maybe aware of the temperature in the room, sounds. For this last minute, we're broadening our awareness in order to go back into the world. Okay, so you can relax your concentration, just check in your own experience if it has kind of made you feel more settled, more present. So Lama Yeshe, who established this center and many centers around the world, he used to say, you have to treat your nervous system sympathetically. You know, you can't be rushing around like a maniac after work and getting a lot of stuff done and then get home and sit on your meditation cushion and meditate. You know, impossible. And he said, better to have a blissful cup of coffee, you know, to come into your body. So this 3-minute breathing space, which is used a lot in mindfulness-based therapies around the world in hospitals and so on, can be very useful for getting off that treadmill of busyness that we're on all day. You know, isn't a lot of the day about getting stuff done? You know, it is in my day. You know, I'll have a list of stuff I need to get done, and I don't have to go to an office and do 9 hours or whatever of that. But, you know, we have a lot of getting stuff done to do, and so the 3-minute breathing space can just be a pause in that. So it might be a good experiment to see how you might bring that into your day. Because don't believe in a word that I say, you know, I don't know what's going to work for you, I have no idea. So you need to experiment for yourselves and maybe find those times. You know, I was thinking earlier this evening, a really good time to do a 3-minute breathing space for me would be before that impulse to turn on Netflix. You know, so having times during the day when you remember. Okay, so I said before, a very helpful and very important way to bring spiritual practice into our daily lives, that is to remember to do it, is to set our intention, our motivation as soon as we wake up, before the mind is very busy planning and wanting and, you know, that kind of stuff. So lying in bed, you know, we have beds are such pleasant places. Lying in bed, for a moment we might appreciate that we have a precious life. And the Dalai Lama's morning prayer is a great way to start the day. This is one that we recommend in Healing Group. So his prayer goes, it's called A Precious Human Life, and he wrote it for, I think, his Western students. Every day, think as you wake up, today I'm fortunate to have woken up. Wow, I'm alive. I have a precious human life. I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others, to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all living beings. I'm going to have kind thoughts towards others. I'm not going to get angry or think badly about others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. So this is a really good way to start the day. And then there's another one in the same vein that Geshe Doga has mentioned quite a few times over the last 40 years. 35, however long he's been here. Anyway, he recommends, he says, the most practical approach appropriate at our level is to develop the following attitude on a daily basis. I will not harm any being in the slightest manner, and I will benefit living beings in the best possible way. So neither of them are saying, well, I'm going to try to do it, or I'll give it my best shot. They're kind of much more direct. This is how I'm going to live my day. So I've actually printed them out, and they're just there under Lama Tsongkhapa, that picture under green Tara. And you're welcome to take one if you'd like one. Maybe put it next to your bed. And in the morning, whenever you catch yourself and you see it and you think, then, do the motivation. So we're aiming not to harm any being at all, and we're aiming to be of benefit to living beings as much as possible, knowing that according to the Buddha and according to our wonderful teachers, this is the path to true happiness for ourselves and others. This is the cause for happiness. And Alan Wallace, one of the marvellous American teachers, defines true happiness, and I really love this definition, as a state of genuine well-being that flows from a wellspring of awareness that is pure and unobscured. And he says we all have the potential to discover or uncover this innate deep happiness that doesn't rely on our possessions or our relationships or our circumstances, but relies on our minds, our attitudes, our ability to love, to be compassionate, to see things realistically, to accept what we cannot change with wisdom. So I think it's amazing. And in the Buddhist context, the most expansive motivation is to become a fully awakened Buddha in order to be of maximum benefit to others, because it's not until you become a fully awakened being that you know that you can really see how people need to be helped. And at the moment we are so limited. I'm so limited and get it wrong. So often I think, this is the way that's going to help this person. Totally wrong. Totally wrong. And the thought of being a fully awakened Buddha, of never being angry again. Just that, imagine never being angry, never being irritated, how that would affect our families, how we are in the world, how we work with our neighbours, and so on. The thing is that if we're doing our best to live our lives in line with this aspiration as much as we can, being ethical, developing compassion and so on, and we remember to dedicate our actions. In the beginning we do the motivation, at the end we do dedication. Some of you will be familiar with this. At the end of meditation practice, we dedicate the positive potential that has arisen during that practice to the benefit of others. We dedicate. So dedication is very important. And Geshe Doga, our resident Tibetan Lama, he says dedicating our actions like that, motivating and then dedicating our actions, is like putting money in the bank. Although that's probably not a good analogy, now I come to think about it, given what we've learned about the banks of late, but you get my drift, banks used to be very trustworthy places. The thing is, it's never wasted. So positive thoughts and actions are imprinted on the mind stream from the Buddhist point of view that will ripen into our experience in future lives. And even just in terms of this life, it means we'll become more peaceful and have no regrets at the time of death, that I think is, really important. And setting the bar so high means that as human beings, of course, we are going to make mistakes and we are going to blow it, and we're going to get angry and hurt the people in our lives, hurt the people we least want to hurt, make terrible decisions, or what feel like terrible decisions. All of us. And that means the people in our lives will do the same. So how do we work with that? What do we do when we make what feels like a huge mistake and we're feeling awful about it? So going back to the heart is noble, which is kind of where I started in the first week, the book by the Karmapa, which is a lot about our stewardship of the planet, among other things. But going back to him, he said, when you're dreaming of what is possible for your life, you should know that anything is possible. You may not feel it or see it, but you never for a single moment lack the capacity to change course. So this means that it doesn't matter what we've done up until now. Every day is a new day to try a different direction, to try to do things differently, because we are people of habit. In a friendly letter, Nagarjuna, or some people say Nagarjuna, I'm not sure, but he was one of the most important Buddhist philosophers. He said, if a person who up until now had been reckless in their behaviour were in the future to take great care in avoiding destructive actions, then like Nanda, Angulimala, Darshan and Shankara, they would become as beautiful as the moon free from clouds. So here, Nagarjuna is referring to disciples of the Buddha who, prior to hearing his teachings, had committed serious crimes. And there was this dude, Angulimala, who was a serial killer living at the time of the Buddha. And he believed that if he killed 1,000 people, he would get miraculous powers. So he'd killed 999 people and he'd cut off their thumbs and made them into a necklace. The word for necklace is mala. And so he'd made it out of their thumb bones, hence his name, Angulimala. And since he'd killed just about everybody in the village, I think the only person left was his mum. So he decided to go and get her little thumb. But on the way he saw the Buddha and decided to kill the Buddha instead and get his thumb. And being an incredible athlete, he ran like the wind, but no matter how fast he ran, the Buddha, despite not moving, remained ahead of him. So eventually Angulimala caught up with the Buddha and was totally amazed by his radiance, and they had a conversation, and through listening to the Buddha's words he was able to understand the effects of his gruesome actions, and he repented, regretted, took robes, became a monk, and through very diligent practice became enlightened. So I think there's hope for us. There is always a solution. And one of the things that I really cherish about the way that Buddhism is presented in the Tibetan tradition is that the problems are described, the difficulties are described, but then there's always the antidotes. How do you work with it? I really, really like that. And I like the way it's so kind of neat. You have the 4 of this and the 5 of that and the 10 of this. It's in lists that can be really understood. So the Buddha taught a practice or a reflection or contemplation called the 4 opponent powers that some of you will remember. And the aim is, rather than to stay stuck in this kind of guilty cycle of, and don't the worrying thoughts come up when you're in bed. Don't you worry when you're trying to go to sleep and suddenly you remember this thing you've done. So instead of going along that path, the Buddha taught the 4 opponent powers to apply to mistakes so that we don't get stuck in feelings of guilt, which are damaging anyway and can't change the situation. So it's a contemplation that can really help us move on. So it's very important when we do analytical meditations, which we've done every week this month, that we use our examples from our own lives to think about. Because, you can think about compassion in a very general way. Of course, I want compassion for all living beings, but it becomes much more potent if we're thinking about situations and people in our own lives. So if you can, so we'll just do a kind of, we won't do the actual, well, maybe we will, except the fourth power we're going to do at the end of the session. Anyway, we'll sort it out. So just think of a time, reflect on a time when you really felt that you were less than skillful, when you did something that resulted in someone else being hurt or upset and resulted in you feeling badly about it. And it might be something that happened very recently, or it might be something that happened a long time ago that keeps coming back and back and back. And in relation to that mistake that we've made, the first power is regret, remorse. So we consciously accept responsibility for having done the action. And we look at and understand the consequences of that action as clearly as we can. Just seeing it for what it is. And seeing that the result is upset, hurt, betrayal, whatever it is, then we try to generate from the heart, from this understanding, genuine remorse for having made the mistake. We think, I'm really, really sorry that I did that. The second power is called reliance. And that is, we try to cultivate the mind of compassion toward the person or people you've hurt. And the Buddhist explanation of compassion is a sincere wish for them not to suffer anymore, and particularly in relation to the action, that their suffering disappears. So in our mind's eye, we're restoring and healing our relationship with them. And for Buddhist practitioners at this point, we would also take refuge, that is, seek a safe direction in the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha, and the spiritual community. The third power is resolve, not to engage in that action again. Instead, from now on, I will try to act in a way that is completely the opposite, as much as I can. So if we've been unkind with our speech, we train ourselves to be more careful with the way we speak, We might even say sorry, apologize to the person if that's possible, and it's not always possible. If it's not possible to do it face to face because of circumstances or the person is no longer alive, then we might visualize that conversation happening sincerely from our hearts. Then the fourth power is purification, and there are different ways to purify. And one of them is where we visualize white light and nectar coming down through the crown of our heads, completely purifying us of any negativity associated with the negative action. And it's completely neutralized and disappears completely. So at that point, we try to experience the feeling of being completely free from it. And we become flooded with relief, relaxation. We imagine our hearts are now completely pure. Okay, so we can let go of that. And we're going to do the white light meditation at the end of the session in a more extensive way. So this practice can be very, very helpful. I've found it incredibly helpful. And like any meditation, needs to be done again and again and again, because feeling guilty and ruminating about problems and worrying are mental habits that we've been doing for a very long time. And from the Buddhist point of view, for lifetime. So it's going to take some time to change. And, you know, even in this life, it takes time, we know, to change our neural pathways. So releasing ourselves from the burden of guilt is important, as is cultivating forgiveness for others. And there is very profound logic in the wisdom of forgiveness. Not to forgive someone who's harmed us in whatever way means that we carry that burden of resentment. You know, it's kind of becomes part of our being. And the minds of resentment and anger and hatred give the greatest harm, not to the other person, but to our own minds. And Geshe-la quite often talks about this, that the person towards whom we might be bearing a grudge, you know, could be totally unaware of it. You know, sitting on a cliff in Bali, drinking a mojito, you know, having a wonderful time, totally unaware whilst we're kind of chewing on that worry and resentment. So completely useless, a total waste of time, but very, very difficult to shift. So I actually noticed in the newsletter that Ross Moore, who's leading the October Monday nights, his one-day workshop is on working with grudges. So I think that's going to be fantastic. I know when I think about how my mind grasps onto old storylines and chews on them, which is usually when I'm gardening. I have a very big garden and I spend a lot of time weeding. And that's when the kind of ruminating starts up. And what I've noticed recently is it's the same few grudges. It's very interesting. And I think really generally the thoughts we have during the day, it's kind of the same thoughts that come back again and again. You know, I think we rarely have really new thoughts. So these grudges or these thoughts or these ruminations about people who I perceive have harmed me in the past, and some of them happened a long time ago, they still come up. Not as frequently or with as much power as they used to, which I think for me gives me confidence that these practices actually work, that they are beneficial. but there's always still work to be done. So we know that holding on to resentment is harmful, and it's harmful not only to our mental well-being but also to our physical well-being. And we know, often we can recognise or see things that are a problem much more easily in other people than in ourselves. So we know what it's like when a friend or a loved one has an obsessive dislike of a person and feels compelled to let everyone else know. It's really painful. Everyone suffers. And the thing is that each time we complain and criticise a person, it reinforces the habit of criticism in our mind. So it kind of wears those neural pathways to that place. So forgiveness is definitely important for our own happiness and the happiness of others. And some years ago, and I talked about this a few years ago, I came upon a YouTube clip of His Holiness addressing an audience at Limerick University in Ireland on the power of forgiveness. So the man who'd invited the Dalai Lama to come, his name is Richard Moore, runs an aid program for children in Tanzania, Ethiopia and Gambia. And he was blinded when he was 10 in 1972 as a result of being shot by a soldier during the English-Irish conflict. And the man who shot him was in the audience. And Moore looked at him, he couldn't have looked at him because he was blind, but knew he was there and said, "Charles, you are welcome." And at that point, His Holiness pointed to Charles and indicated to him to come up to the stage. And His Holiness took his hand and Richard Moore's hand, and the three of them held hands together. It was an incredibly powerful and moving image. How incredible to forgive something like that, when sometimes I find it difficult to forgive my husband when he's forgotten my birthday, So Moore went on to say that what helped him cope with his blindness that happened in such a traumatic way, and imagine being 10 and caught in crossfire, or imagine your own children, was that he said he came from a good family and good community, and despite the poverty and difficulties that existed then, he still had choices and opportunities available to him. He added that he never felt any anger or any bitterness about what happened, and that if you think about anger and bitterness, it wouldn't have affected anybody, only him. And we might think that this example is extraordinary and rare, and in reality there's no way we could forgive any person who has harmed us so badly, because don't we sometimes think like that? We hear about these wonderful people and the acts that they show us, and inside there's often a voice saying, "But I could never do that." So Moore was just a poor Irish kid caught in crossfire. He did have an unusually kind mind, obviously, but he said, anger is like a rotten apple. It eats you from the inside. Our forgiveness is a tremendous gift. It is a fantastic place to be. When I forgive, then I'm much happier inside. And when you see children in crossfire, you can see how forgiveness changed my future. So just, think about that forgiveness, the forgiveness that arose in him, even as a 10-year-old, has led to his leadership of an organisation that helps thousands of children. And every person who comes into contact with him will experience his kindness. So it's very powerful. Very, very powerful. So we'll finish by doing the more extended white light healing meditation, so the fourth of those opponent powers. So having regretted, having arisen compassion, having resolved not to do the action anymore, then we move into the purification. So For this practice, again, you might think or just might remember or allow to arise in your mind something that you would like to purify, or some action that you would like to dissolve from your heart and from your mind. So this visualization can also be used for healing sickness. It's one that we use in healing group a lot for healing physical illness, also emotional and mental disturbances, for working with habits that we want to change or any confusion that we're experiencing. So sitting comfortably again. And intentionally allowing your bodies to relax. We don't relax enough in the proper way. So just quickly scanning up and down your body, noticing if you're holding on in any area of your body, back of the neck, hips, shoulders, sometimes around the solar plexus. Wherever you're holding on to tension or discomfort, you breathe in, and then release the tension on the out breath. Just do this a few times. And now we generate a very constructive motivation for doing the meditation, one that is meaningful for you. Something like, I'm going to do this meditation in order to give myself a break from unnecessary worrying and to increase my kindness and my wisdom so that I can be really present for the people in my life and the animals. Being aware of the breath again as it comes and goes in the nostrils and out of the nostrils, or aware at the belly rising and falling, wherever you feel the breath most clearly. And you might bring to mind a time when you acted unwisely that you wish to finish. So we imagine above the crown of our heads a light that represents all of the good energy and positive qualities that exist in the universe. If you can accept the existence of enlightened beings, then these are the qualities within their minds. Perfect unconditional love, universal compassion, wisdom that understands the way things are and is completely unconfused. And if it's helpful for your mind, you can imagine this energy embodied in the form of the Buddha or Tara or Jesus or Mary or any other image that works for you, such as a sphere of brilliant light. So establish your visualization as clearly as you can. If it doesn't come clearly, you don't worry, you just have a strong sense of it there. And we imagine that as we breathe in, this very pure, blissful light streams down into us, It pours through the crowns of our head, and it immediately brings courage, being without any fear, especially in regard to helping others. No matter what has to be done to help others. This beautiful sparkling light brings to us skill in knowing how to help each person according to their mind and their needs. Blissful white light and nectar pouring down, completely filling our bodies and minds. And anything related to the action that we regret, anything of our body, speech and mind related to that action, completely disappears without a trace. And now think of other positive qualities that you'd like to develop within yourself, qualities that you need. And think that these qualities are in the form of this light. As we breathe in, it flows again into our body, and it flows to all parts of our body, going all the way down to our toes, fingertips, filling every part of the body, down to the cells and atoms, subatomic particles. And we just spend a few moments continuing to breathe and visualizing the light of those qualities completely flooding our bodies. And the source of that light is inexhaustible, as is the loving kindness of an awakened being's love and compassion. And think of the light as being healing, having the quality of healing you, healing whatever pain, problems, sickness you might have in your body and mind. This light can heal all those things. And have a feeling that this is really happening, that there really is this blissful, clear light coming into you and filling you. And we feel content with whatever visualization comes. And feel there really is light coming in and filling us. Streaming continually into our bodies, dissolving any illness or problems, and filling us with all the qualities. And our body becomes very light and clear and relaxed. The nature of the light is very blissful, it's very nice. So that feeling fills you up. And the body and mind becomes more and more clear and pure and blissful and free of any problems, any mistakes we've made. Your body and mind now just filled with white light. So now, to conclude the meditation, we dedicate the effort that we've put into doing this meditation and the positive energy that's been generated to benefit not just ourselves but others as well, as many other beings as possible. So we dedicate for them. May it bring greater peace, happiness, clarity, and freedom from suffering and problems for as many beings as possible. And in your own time, you can relax your concentration. I remember doing this meditation some years ago and asked for questions afterwards, and somebody mentioned that the white light made them feel cold. And so really the instruction would be any light. I mean, white is associated with purity, so it's used for purification. But any light that works for you, any light that inspires your mind is fine. And I think it's really important that we are discriminating in the way we learn to meditate and work out what works best for us. So I think it's very important to get very clear instructions from people like Geshe Doga, His Holiness Dalai Lama, to know the meditations and the teachings as they were explained by the Buddha, by the awakened mind, and keep the taste of that, but I think it's okay to do it in a way that best suits you. Yeah. So I hope I haven't caused confusion over the month. If I have, I apologise, and it's nothing to do with the teachings, it's my own confusion playing a part. But does anybody have a question? And like last week, you can ask anything. You can ask about anything you see in the room that strikes you, or something you've been thinking about for some time, and I'll certainly try and answer, and if I can't answer, then you can ask Ross next week. Yes?
My daughter was here on Sunday, Stephanie's session.
Yes.
And she has a question around setting boundaries.
Yes.
Which is, how do you actually physically and also verbalize setting these boundaries? And how do you just do it?
How do you set boundaries?
Without feeling angry or
Yeah.
without inflaming the situation.
Yes.
Keeping it neutral.
Yes. So the question is about how do we set physical and emotional boundaries without causing problems, and verbal boundaries without causing problems. Of course it depends on the situation. So I don't know what the situation is. But when we talk about having forgiveness, being compassionate, being kind, doesn't mean being a doormat. And if somebody is causing harm to us, then we must stop that harm happening. So if that means moving away from the situation, then that needs to be done. If it means taking out a restraining order so that we can't be harmed by a person, then that needs to be done. With any of these activities, and also I think it's really important that we learn how to speak with the other person when we're in a difficult situation. And you can learn how to have skillful conversations with people like mediators and so on. So, the classic approach of putting things in I terms. So, when I hear you say things like that, it makes me feel threatened and unhappy. So training to be able to do those conversations. If you can't do that, then you need a trusted third party, I think, to help.
Learning to be discerning with your thoughts on what is needing your own adjustment and what is okay to step away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really difficult. I mean, because also, every person is different, so we all have a different level of tolerance to discomfort. And so we have to, I think the best thing of all is to really understand ourselves extremely well, which means taking time to do that. I think sometimes with very difficult situations, I think people need help from relationship psychologists. I think places like Relationships Australia are very good in supporting people to work through different situations. So it's a multi-pronged approach. And also even, as I said, people are all different in their ability to deal with difficulty, and that can change in our own lives. So one year we might be feeling more robust and more able to tolerate difficulty. Other times we can be extremely vulnerable, when I think the most important thing is to step right back and take care of ourselves, and I'm speaking personally, until we're stronger. So there's not one clear answer, but yeah. Okay. But always, and you can take strong measures. His Holiness talks about this, that you can take strong measures against people, stop them. But it's very different doing it with the mind of hatred and with the mind of loving kindness. And remembering again that the Buddhist explanation of love is the wish for others to be happy. That's the meaning. And the mind of compassion is the wish for others not to suffer. So having that kind of attitude can actually give you more resilience. I think the Book of Joy, I often recommend books because I think we're so blessed to have so many wonderful books available to us. And the Book of Joy, which is conversations between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu, very important book, and it's got exercises about how to strengthen ourselves, how to develop emotional resilience, and the ways to do that. So I think it's again a lifelong work, and something might work one year, and it's not going to, because the other person's changed. So yeah, I don't know if that's
I was just wondering about something you said earlier about how do we actually take a bath to benefit all living beings?
Okay. Good question. Yes, I know it kind of seems counterproductive, doesn't it? Well, actually, in some of the practices, you imagine these beautiful bathhouses and all the enlightened beings coming to these beautiful bathhouses. I love this visualization where they bathe in scented water and then anointed with perfumed oils, and it's all about developing the mind of generosity. So like when maybe too much information, but when I have a shower, when the water's first cold, and our hot water heater is a really long way from the shower, so we do try and catch it in a bucket, but it's really cold at first. And what I try to do is imagine all the people who are really cold in the world, freezing. So I imagine taking their coldness away from them. And then when the water comes warm, I imagine the warm water going out to all beings who need to be warm. Or all those, you can imagine in a bath, and you can put beautiful things in the bath, and you can imagine offering this warm, comfortable, pleasant-scented bath to all the, I often think of children who are in refugee camps who are dirty and warm scented water would be lovely for them. So instead of just thinking, oh, this bath is so gorgeous, I'm having such a beautiful time, have some more perfume, but to open the mind and offer it, yeah. So that's how you have a bath for all sentient beings. You can play cricket for sentient beings too. Yeah. Anything. Opening the door, you imagine opening the door to enlightenment for all sentient beings. It's actually a practice that Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our spiritual director, encourages. He's got this long list, when you have something to eat, you imagine offering food to all the beings in the world, and yeah, which is why you can never be bored, because there's always something to do. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you so much. It's been lovely spending a month with some of you very consistently, and lovely meeting new friends along the way. And please join us for a cup of tea and a piece of cake, and have a lovely week. And meditate.